Welcome to the story of a series of unfortunate game development events. We did manage to submit the game on time, but it took a miracle to get it there. If you don't know what the GameJam is, it's an annual jam hosted by Vimlark, a YouTube game developer, that I've taken part in 4 years in a row now. And every single time, something bad happens. So why would this time be any different? Artman Oil, the artist who I'm building my roguelike game with, and Emma, a friend of mine who helps moderate the Discord server and acts as a judge in all of our fireside game jams, agreed to work with me for this jam. We just needed to wait for the theme to be announced. Unlike other jams, the Vim Jam has a theme and focus. So we already knew that part of our game had to be about checkpoints. We just had to wait until the rest of the theme was announced. We already knew that I was going to be going camping for the first weekend of the jam, and because of that we agreed to make something small. The theme was announced, and we had to build a game using checkpoints and cross paths. And I'm not gonna lie, this was kind of a hard one to put together. We bounced back and forth a ton of ideas, trying to figure out what exactly we could do with both of those themes, but every time we came up with a good idea for one side of the theme, it always felt the other side was tacked on. For example, for crossing paths, I thought of Tron, where you're not allowed to cross the path of the other player in the game or you'll die. And that was a really cool idea, and I started thinking of all the ways we could use that from either a top-down or platformer perspective until we realized that the checkpoint didn't make any sense. And that's when Emma spoke up and suggested a puzzle platformer game with that Tron trail going behind the character, but where you placed a checkpoint somewhere in the level after picking it up so that you can go back to that checkpoint and not have to skip over your own trail to pick up different things in the level. And with the game idea hammered out, I went off to survive in the wilderness, while Artman Oil and Emma worked on the style, theme, music, and overall design, because Artman Oil was in charge of the art and Emma was in charge of the sound and music. So between the two of them, they would come up with the game's aesthetic, and I would be the one to put the game together when I got back. And from this point, things were looking up. Artman Oil had gotten a new laptop, and this thing was like a beast, compared to their old laptop that they had before that wasn't able to run A-Sprite. So they got this new laptop and A-Sprite, and were suddenly able to do a whole lot of new things that they weren't able to do before. And Emma, right out of the gate, came up with this music style that was just really cool. I wish I had the words to describe it to you, but just listen. And then skip ahead to when I got back from toughing it out in the woods. I was absolutely exhausted and didn't do a single thing. So this is when I finally got to work. I brought the character over into the scene, gave them the platform behavior, had them moving around, figured out the speed and scale that the game would be operating at, roughly, and I tried to give it wall sliding and jumping, and lost an entire day there, just fighting with that. I've done it before, but for some reason my brain and this project were just not getting along. So now I'm plugging away with new mechanics, creating pickups that will give you the ability to do things like double jump and air dash. And then I got the checkpoint system working with a floating cassette that Artman Oil had made, where when you pick it up, you place it somewhere in the level, and then at any time you could warp back to it. And then I started building the trail for the character. I eventually wanted to make it so that it mimicked the animations the character is actually doing at the time that the image is created, so it would be like an after image of the player as they go around the level. But I started with little blocks first, making it so that they tween in as you run, so you've got a little bit of a safe distance behind you that won't kill you until they turn full opacity. So as long as you keep running, you won't die. So that was all of the mechanics finally coming together, which of course is when things started to go wrong. Artman Oil's brand new laptop blew up. Just bam. So they were done. Any art that was in the game is all that I would have, which meant that I needed to make brand new art. because up to this point, I was just using different colored squares as the pickups in game, and that's not gonna work. So I tried my hand at art. I took the floating cassette image and tried to mimic the particles that were coming off of it and the floating up and down to make something similar, but obviously not as good. You can very clearly tell which one was made by an artist and which one was made by me. But I got those into the game and had to accept that it was just going to be me and Emma until the end. Until when Emma fell victim to the curse. The curse of the Vim Jam. I don't know if it's because the jam is 10 days long and there's just more chances for things to go wrong in a longer period of time, or if I am genuinely cursed. I don't know. So Emma was going to move out in a few days after the jam had ended. They were going to a different apartment and all of their stuff was already in boxes, but on day 8, one of Emma's pipes bursted and flooded the apartment. So now their free time that they were going to use on the jam was just gone. They had sent in the music for the main menu and a bunch of sound effects for jumping and button clicking and all those things. But they were going to spend the last 2 days making a loop for levels, which meant that we didn't have music in each level. So now it was just me, with 2 days left in the jam, which meant that I needed to figure out all of the sound effect work, art for buttons for the menus, as well as all of the levels for the game, because none of that was done yet. So I had my second coffee of day 8 and got to work, setting up the different menus for settings and the level select. None of it was working yet, of course, but I had set the transitions between different scenes and all that kind of stuff. I had resigned myself to getting all of the functionality around the game done by Saturday, and then on the last day, Sunday, I would get all of the game part of the game done, which was all of the levels, which hadn't been started yet. So now it's... And I was starting to panic because there was no game yet. But I woke up in the morning, had my coffee, and got to work. Starting with level 0, where I taught the player how to jump. Level 1, where I taught them the dash. Level 2, where they were shown that the trail behind them would kill them. Level 3, where the checkpoint was shown to them. And then level 4, where I could finally start making some levels with all the different mechanics. And by level 4, Artman Oil chimes back in on the Discord server. They had been able to get a new laptop and were ready to work again, which was great, but we had almost no time left. So they got to work firing off whatever they could make in the quickest amount of time, starting with the penis rocket, which Artman Oil refuses to say looks like that, but like, come on, it does. It really does. As well as a juice box to replace the dash icon. And they sent me a 9-patch panel for the buttons and the sliders in the menu, as well as a bunch of other things, like a new dash animation and a thank you for playing screen to use at the end of the game. But now I'm more than halfway through the last day, and I had all this art to cram into the game, as well as levels to keep making. Levels that, by the way, we never actually got to playtest, because we had no time. And then as I'm getting through the 8th and 9th level, Emma pops back in, with a new really good jingle for the end of each level. And I'm so happy this got sent in because it was really the icing on the cake. And even though there was no music in the level itself, the jumping and the picking up of objects and the music tone at the end of the level kind of pulled everything together and filled in that dead space. But anyhow, last night, I wanted to have 14 done, and I was going to get there. And by some absolute miracle, the game was submitted before the deadline. And the results were pretty good. We came in 18th place, with first place for animation and art. We didn't win, but we also didn't lose. A huge thank you to my patrons. Because of them, my coffee cup is full. And as always, the links to the places that I hang out are down below, and if you decide to click on one, then I'll see you there.